Okay, we are team ground2float, and so we're going to be talking about grounding zones for a little bit here. For the sea ice folks, a grounding zone is the point where an ice sheet flows out into the ocean, the region where it goes afloat. And with tides, that region or zone might shift a little bit. And this location is important because when there's change, when ice thins at this point or when it shifts inland, it impacts the stability of the whole ice sheet, right? So where we have thicker ice flowing out into the ocean, it can flow faster. And so shifting of that grounding line inland can drive faster mass discharge out into the ocean. So there's a lot of interest in quantifying where these grounding lines are, around grounding zones are, and how they shift over time. And I chose this particular cartoon because it's from a Walter Monk paper, and the last figure of the paper is this gem, which is green goblins in a grounding zone to signify we know so little about these processes happening at grounding zones that there may well be green goblins under there. I highly recommend using this in classes where you talk about grounding zone dynamics.
Cool. So yeah, despite grounding line zones being sort of a really important metric of ice sheet change, it's kind of notoriously difficult to measure these sort of where these zones are. There's been sort of three principal methods to do this. So one is probably the most wide-ranged used method is differential interferograms from INSAR. So effectively, if you get two interferograms and you difference the two, basically the grounded ice should stay basically the same height, but on the floating ice, if you've got any sort of tidal difference, you'll start to see differences in phase, and then you can sort of then pick the grounding line, which is great. But the sort of real problem with this is that it's pretty difficult to do, and most of the time it doesn't work. Because when you have sort of radar satellites, you need a really sort of short repeat time, because otherwise you lose coherence. So, for example, on Sentinel-1, which is a repeat period of 6 days, in some regions that still won't work. You still won't be able to get a grounding line from that. The second method is sort of slope break. So, as the cartoon shows, when you reach the ice shelf, the slope sort of becomes a bit more flat, and you can actually pick that out from just optical imagery. So you can go back to sort of the 1970s by doing that. The problem with this method is that it's...
Oh, you can see me.
Yeah, the problem with this method is that it's there's sort of high errors associated with it, and regions where sort of bedrock topography is really shallow, sometimes you can see. The other method is this is done on ISAT-1 from Fricker and Hadman, and effectively has repeat pass tracks. I think this is over the Amory ice shelf, and on the left-hand side is the grounded ice. And then when you hit the ice shelf, because it's different tracks at different times and different points in the tidal cycle, you can see this really sort of nice difference, and that basically signifies when you're going from grounding ice to floating ice, which is grounding line, which is what we're after. So I guess ideally we would try and do something like this with ISAT-2, but we don't have the repeat tracks yet. So we've kind of come up with some other method of to explain.
So we may not have repeat tracks yet, but we have other DEMs. And so we are differencing ISAT-2 from REMA with the thought that the imagery that goes into REMA is taken at a certain tidal state or certain tidal elevation, and perhaps the ISAT-2 tracks are going to be at a different point in the tidal cycle. The hard part here being we really don't know what the point of the tidal cycle is that the REMA imagery comes from. We know the day that the imagery is collected on, but not the hour, minute, second of the mosaics. We're using the mosaics. You could hypothetically do this with the individual strips, and then you do know more detailed information. But in a 1 week hack, we're using the mosaic. So yeah, we'll be differencing ISAT-2 from REMA to see if there are differences around grounding zones. And so the tools that we built to address this question, like many others, we have our own script for downloading ISAT2 data for a given bounding box across specific dates. We also worked up the ability to load in TIFF files and then sample them at the ISAT2 locations. And then not just for REMA, but for, say, ice flow speeds, because it's important to think about, is the line that we are looking at anything close to a flow line? And so we provide that.
Yeah.
So we're going to move over to our notebook now and show you the results.
Shooter, you want to take over from here?
Sure.
Whoa.
So we built everything in a notebook, and I'm sorry to be the first one to do this, but this is my one criticism of this whole Hack Week thing is these notebooks really kind of forced us into a kind of a not too collaborative style of doing it, because we couldn't really share the notebooks as well. If I'd seen that kind of, if you all provide a template for that package, that would be really fantastic. And then just kind of tell everybody, start building your functions in these packages, and then import them into your notebook, and then test them, and then go and edit the packages. That way we could have done this. But anyways, we've got a working notebook here that we ran, and sort of at the high level, it was get the ISAT data, pull out all the important parameters, and then get the REMA imagery and overlay them and pull out the elevations from REMA. Do the same for the velocities, and then intercompare them. So I even know how to use a Mac.
What are you trying to do?
I'm just trying to scroll up and down.
Oh, if you just use the arrows, it'll take you up and down the cells.
Oh, okay. You can't do partial
I
because
don't know.
why is it? There we go.
Oh, you have to get out of the plots.
Right. Okay. All right. So this is basically the function that we wrote that allows us to look at this. And so this is the REMA elevation model over here, and then we plotted the ground track and the grounding line along with it, and then the comparison plots over here on the right on the lower part are a comparison of this sort of light blue line is the Padman tide model for that region at the time that the ISAT overflights were, and there's clearly a big difference between them. So the times are either the tide model is wrong, or we're just not fully understanding what's going on over here. But nevertheless, we have the ability to bring those data in and to do those intercomparisons. But then the main things that we looked at were the REMA surface elevations and the ISAT surface elevations. And you can see this very clear slope break as you're coming down, and then you go out onto the ice shelf. This was all done on Thwaites Glacier, which is right over here, and this is an descending track, and so it goes from the ocean out onto the ice sheet. And then this is the difference between the two. And again, you can see the change in character. The differences are between REMA and ISAT, and they're very flat in here. There's clearly some clouds and whatnot. And then you start to get closer to the grounding line, and crevasses are starting to form, and then everything goes to heck once you're past the grounding line. This bottom plot is the ice flow velocity. This is this jaggy line, the azimuth for the ice flow velocity. And then this solid line is the ISAT2 track direction. So we can kind of compare those two as well. And we didn't have a GUI or anything going with this, so you have to go through and edit this. But you can look at different different tracks and in different. Did you get the other download the filter running data onto this one or no?
Was it up in the bucket?
I don't know. It's only on mine. All right, but so we downloaded data for a whole bunch of different parts of the continent, and then we can look at them. But let's see if there's a different track.
You want to zoom in where you can actually see the difference that's going on. So you go out.
Yeah. So this is a different line, slightly offset from the previous one. And again, you can see as you get closer to the grounding line, these differences kind of start to accumulate. See if we can zoom in here. So this is right at the grounding line. And again, you clearly see you're coming along, things are smooth, and then right past the grounding line, things start to go to heck. And the idea is that this tidal signal here is what we'll use to correct for the differences between them. So this is where we've gotten to, and we'll keep working on that. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that, Kyle?
No, I think we were both surprised and pleased that across so many tracks there really was a pretty strong difference between ISAT and REMA at the point that you go afloat. So, woohoo! Any questions?